She looked at him the way hotel staff sometimes look at people who have wandered in from the wrong part of the city. Not unkindly, exactly, but with a particular kind of professional patience that was really just a polished version of suspicion. He was standing in the lobby of the Pemberton Grand on King Street West, 3 steps inside the revolving door, his 7-year-old daughter's hand tucked into his, and there was a smear of gear oil along his left knuckle that he hadn't managed to wash clean before the drive down from Renfrew. His jacket was the brown canvas kind that mechanics and farmers and hockey coaches wear because it lasts, not because it looks like anything. And the woman crossing the marble floor toward him had already decided something before he'd had a chance to say a word. What happened over the next 40 minutes was captured on a stranger's phone. The clip ran to 11 minutes. Within 24 hours, it had been watched by 3 million people. Within a week, the number had stopped meaning anything to the man who filmed it. And for the 2 people at the center of it, the man in the canvas jacket and the woman in the hotel blazer, nothing would be quite the same after. Before any of that, though, there was just a lobby, and a little girl with a turtle backpack, and a decision that someone made before she had all the facts. Tate Morley was 41 years old, though he looked closer to 38 on the days he'd slept properly, which lately was not most days. He stood just over 6 feet, broad across the shoulders in the way that comes from work rather than the gym, with hands that were permanently stained at the creases, no matter how carefully he scrubbed them. He'd spent 15 years as a principal engineer at Karsten Automotive's design facility in Oshawa, where he'd led the team that developed a fuel injection calibration system eventually licensed to 3 of the 4 largest auto suppliers in North America. He held 7 patents. He'd left Karsten 4 years ago, quietly without fanfare, and had taken a severance that most people in the industry considered a dramatic undersell of his value. 3 months after that, he'd sold the licensing rights on 2 of those patents for an amount that his accountant described as life-changing and that Tate described to no one because he didn't think it was anyone's business. He'd moved to Renfrew with his daughter after his wife died. The house was a farmhouse that needed work. He'd done the work himself, mostly on weekends, over 18 months. The garage, Morley's garage, a sign above the bay doors in plain black lettering, had been operating for 2.5 years. He fixed cars. He was very good at it. He charged fair prices. In Renfrew, that was enough. His daughter Maeve was 7 years old and had her mother's dark curly hair and her father's habit of asking the kind of questions that made adults go quiet for a moment before answering. She was wearing her favorite sweater, the oversized gray one with the Karsten Automotive logo that Tate had brought home from a work event when she was 4, and which she still insisted on wearing even though the sleeves now had to be rolled up twice to find her hands. She had a small backpack shaped like a turtle. She'd packed it herself and had not disclosed the full contents. "Is it a tall building?" she asked, looking up at the lobby ceiling. "Yes," Tate said. "How many floors?" 30-something. She considered this. "Can we take the stairs?" "We'll take the elevator." She appeared to weigh the trade-offs of this. "Okay," she said, with the tone of someone granting a small concession. They had driven 4 hours from Renfrew that morning. Tate had left the garage at noon after finishing a brake job on the Kowalski family's minivan, changed his shirt in the shop bathroom, and driven through the October afternoon with Maeve reading in the back seat, and the radio tuned to nothing in particular. He hadn't slept well in 3 weeks. That wasn't new. Sleep had been unreliable since Ellen died, and unreliable in a different way since the negotiations around the scholarship program had started taking on complications he hadn't anticipated. The scholarship was the reason they were here. The Elspeth Morley Engineering Scholarship, named for his wife, funded quietly by a holding company called Morley Precision, which was the entity his accountant had set up to manage the patent proceeds. Ellen had been a mechanical engineer before Maeve was born. She had been by any objective measure the more gifted engineer of the 2 of them, though she'd never once said so and would have been genuinely puzzled by the comparison. She'd died of a brain aneurysm 3 years ago at 37. It had been fast and senseless in the specific way that things are sometimes fast and senseless, and Tate had spent the year afterward in a kind of fog that he didn't fully understand until he came out the other side of it. The scholarship awarded 5 bursaries per year to women pursuing undergraduate degrees in mechanical or automotive engineering at Canadian universities. The Pemberton Grand hosted the annual gala. Tate had come to everyone. He always sat in the back. He was not on the program. He hadn't wanted to be. This year, however, his name was on the program because the scholarship committee had asked him, specifically and persistently, to deliver a short keynote address. He'd agreed 3 weeks ago after the 4th request. He'd been working on what to say ever since and had not yet arrived at anything that felt right. He had not thought to wear a suit. The woman who crossed the lobby toward them was named Simone Farrow. She was the Pemberton Grand Senior Events Coordinator, 34 years old, with a reputation among the hotel's permanent staff for being efficient to the point of being uncomfortable and meticulous to the point of being inflexible. She had managed more than 200 events in 4 years at the hotel. She was good at her job. She was also, on this particular Thursday afternoon, acting on information she had received earlier that week, a note, forwarded through a vaguely worded email chain, suggesting that an individual might attempt to access the Tate Morley Scholarship Gala under false pretenses. The note was imprecise. It described a man in his 40s, casually dressed, possibly accompanied by a child. It suggested politely but firmly that this person should be redirected. Simone had not thought too hard about the source. She'd been busy. She'd filed it in the part of her mind labeled precautionary and moved on. Now she was looking at a man in a canvas jacket with engine grease on his knuckle and a child in an oversized company sweater, and the filing cabinet in her mind opened on its own. "Excuse me," she said, and her voice was warm in the way a closed window is warm, present but not inviting anything through. Tate looked at her. "Good afternoon. Are you arriving for an event this evening?" "The Tate Morley Scholarship Gala," he said. "Cedar Room, 6th floor." Something shifted in her expression, not dramatically, just a recalibration, a brief internal adjustment. "That event is ticketed and by invitation," she said. "May I ask your name?" "Morley," he said. "Tate Morley." She glanced at the clipboard under her arm. "I don't see ya." "I'm listed as a speaker this year," Tate said. "My name is also on the scholarship. The holding company is Morley Precision Engineering." Simone looked up. She looked at him in the specific way of someone who has arrived at a conclusion and is now searching for a way to reconcile it with new information without fully abandoning it. What she saw was the jacket and the knuckles and the 7-year-old with the turtle backpack. What she heard was a claim she had not expected. "I'll need to verify that," she said. "We have a process for." "Of course," Tate said, and his voice was entirely level. He pulled out his phone and brought up the confirmation email from the scholarship committee. His name, the event, the Cedar Room, the time, the words keynote speaker in the subject line. He held it out. Simone looked at the screen for longer than she needed to. "I'm sorry, but I can't accept digital confirmation as identification. This is a private event." "There's a printed program in the lobby," Tate said. She looked at him. "Near the elevator bank," he said. "I can see the display stand from here." Maeve had turned to look at the display stand. She could read. She could read faster than most adults gave her credit for. She read the program title, and then she read the name under keynote remarks, and she looked up at her father with an expression that was not pride exactly. It was something quieter, recognition. "Dad," she said, "that's your name." "I know," Tate said. Simone had not followed Maeve's gaze quickly enough. She was still working through something internally, still running a calculation that had begun the moment he walked through the door. "I'm going to ask you to wait in the lobby cafe," she said, "while I confirm with the event organizer." "We'll wait here," Tate said pleasantly. "It would be easier for..." "We're fine here." Simone's jaw tightened slightly. "The gala begins in an hour, and I need to ensure the event space is..." "What is your name?" Tate asked, not unkindly. The way you ask a question when you want to have it for later. "Simone Farrow, Senior Events Coordinator." "Simone," Tate said. "I drove 4 hours from Renfrew this morning. My daughter has been sitting in the back of a pickup since noon. I am on the program for this event. My name is on the scholarship that is the reason for this event. I am going to stand here with my daughter and wait for you to make whatever call you need to make, and then we're going to go upstairs." He looked at her steadily. Is there anything else you need from me right now? The lobby was not particularly crowded, but there were enough people nearby that several had glanced over. One of them, a man in his 50s, standing near the concierge desk, a freelance journalist named Ross Barker, who covered the scholarship program for an engineering trade publication, had quietly taken out his phone. Simone reached for the radio at her hip. The call she made lasted 3 minutes. Tate stood with Maeve, who had unzipped her turtle backpack and extracted a small book about deep-sea creatures and had begun reading it against the side of his arm. She turned pages with the quiet self-sufficiency of a child who has spent a lot of time waiting in adult situations and has learned to come prepared. "Dad," she said, not looking up. Does that lady think we're not supposed to be here?" Tate looked at the ceiling for a moment before answering. "She's not sure," he said. "She's trying to find out." Maeve turned a page. She could have just looked at the sign. "I know." Why didn't she? Tate thought about that for a moment. Sometimes people make up their minds before they have all the information. Then, it's hard to change course. Maeve absorbed this. "That seems like a design flaw," she said. "It is," Tate said, "in people mostly." She turned another page. Conrad Hess had been the general manager of the Pemberton Grand for 11 years. He was 56, measured and deliberate in the way of someone who had managed enough crises to understand that the first 30 seconds of any situation rarely told you the whole story. He came into the lobby from the direction of the service corridor, and he saw Tate Morley before he saw anything else, because he had met Tate Morley at a corporate sponsor event 2 years prior and had a good memory for faces. He also saw Simone Farrow standing 3 feet away, holding her clipboard with both hands. And the expression on her face told him that whatever was happening had been going on for a few minutes already. "Mr. Morley," Conrad said, extending a hand. "Welcome. I apologize, I didn't know you'd arrived." Tate shook his hand. "No trouble." Conrad glanced at Simone. Her face had gone quite still. "Is everything all right?" "Miss Farrow was verifying my registration," Tate said. There was nothing in his voice that emphasized any particular word. Conrad looked at Simone. "Morley Precision Engineering is the founding donor of the Elspeth Morley Scholarship," he said, and his voice was very quiet and very clear. "Mr. Morley has attended every annual gala since the program launched. He's listed as the keynote speaker on tonight's program, the program that is on the display stand in this lobby." He paused. "Has everything been sorted?" Simone said, Yes. Her voice was smaller than it had been. "Good." Conrad turned to Maeve. "And who is this?" "Maeve Morley," Maeve said, with the gravity of someone who considers their name important information. "Are you interested in engineering?" "I'm interested in deep-sea creatures right now," she said, "but I'm open." Conrad almost smiled. "Reasonable approach," he said. "Shall we?" Tate did not know, as they rode the elevator to the 6th floor, that Ross Barker had filmed the entire exchange, 9 minutes of footage captured from the concierge desk. Ross had recognized Tate's name from the program and understood immediately what was happening. He had not yet decided what to do with it. He called his wife from the elevator. She told him to post it. He argued with her for 45 minutes. He posted it at 11:30 that night with a single caption. "Watched the founding donor of the Elspeth Morley Scholarship get questioned for 30 minutes in the lobby before the event bearing his wife's name. His kid was there. Make of it what you will. No hashtags. No call to share." By 2 in the morning, it had 400,000 views. By the time Ross woke up, it had 3 million. The keynote ran 9 minutes. Tate had written his remarks on a legal pad and then left the legal pad in the room because he decided he didn't want to read from it. He stood at the front of the cedar room and talked about his wife the way people talk about things they know so well they don't need notes. He said she had been impatient with slow printers and bad coffee and anyone who underestimated a problem. He said she had once caught a calibration error in a prototype that his entire team had missed, found it in 11 minutes, and never mentioned it again because she didn't think it needed mentioning. He said she had gone back to finish her master's degree while working full-time, had done it quietly over 2 years, and had celebrated by making pancakes. He said the scholarship existed because she had believed something he was still learning to believe himself. That the person who could solve the problem you couldn't solve might be sitting outside the room, waiting to be let in, and that the least you could do was prop the door open. He paused once in the middle for a few seconds. Nobody in the room moved. At the end, he said, she would have been embarrassed by all of this. She would have said it was too formal and asked if there was somewhere better to be. I don't have an answer to that. But I think this is the right direction. He stepped back from the microphone. The room was quiet for a moment, and then it wasn't. Maeve, who had been sitting in the front row, watched her father walk back to his seat. She had the expression she wore when she was filing something away for later. Simone Farrow saw the video at 6 in the morning, sitting on the floor of her bathroom with her phone in both hands. Her roommate had sent her a link at midnight. She watched herself cross the lobby and approach a man with a child and a book about deep-sea creatures, and decide, before he had said a word, that he was a problem to be managed. She watched herself hold the clipboard. She watched herself direct him toward the cafe. She watched Conrad's face when he arrived. She watched Tate's face through all of it, and that was the hardest part. He had never raised his voice. Not once. He had simply waited and been right, and let the situation explain itself without help from anyone. She called the hotel's HR line at 8:30. She drafted something on her phone, not a press statement. She wasn't in a position to issue press statements. Just something honest, under her own name, that she posted on her personal account at noon. It was 6 paragraphs. It said she had made a decision about a person based on what he was wearing and had acted on that decision without asking herself why. It said she was sorry. It said specifically that she was sorry to his daughter, who had done nothing wrong and had handled the situation with more composure than she had. It did not go as viral as the original clip, but it went wide enough. Priya Anand, who managed operations for Morley Precision Engineering from an office in Ottawa, texted Tate on Friday morning, "You need to see something. Don't open near Maeve." Tate was in the shop when he read it. Maeve was at school. He opened the link and watched 9 minutes of footage with a socket wrench in one hand, standing beside a Civic with its hood up. He watched it the way you watch something you were present for, with the additional layer of observation that comes from seeing yourself from the outside, which is always strange and rarely comfortable. What he felt was not clean. He had managed the anger at the time, kept it below the surface where it wouldn't shape anything he said or did. Watching the video, it came back to him more directly than it had in the moment. Not at Simone specifically, but at the fact that Maeve had been standing there, that his daughter had watched an adult look at her father and determine, in the space of 10 seconds, that he didn't belong where he was, and that Maeve had understood what was happening before he'd had to explain it, because she was sharp, and because, and this was the part that sat with him, she had seen it before, in smaller ways, enough times to recognize the shape of it. He put the phone in his pocket and went back to the Civic. Priya called an hour later, 3 media requests. He told her to wait. He wanted to see what Simone did first. He read Simone's statement in the shop parking lot, sitting on the tailgate of his truck. He read the 4th paragraph twice. It was the one about Maeve. He's texted Priya, "Nothing from our side. Not yet." He called Simone that afternoon. It rang 4 times. She picked up on the 5th. "Mrs. Farrow," he said. A pause. "Mr. Morley." Her voice was careful. "I didn't expect." "I read your statement," he said. She didn't respond immediately. "I'm not calling to make anything harder for you," he said. "I wanted to say that I saw what you wrote about Maeve, and I wanted to say that directly." She was quiet for a moment. "I meant it," she said. Not as a, "I genuinely meant it." "I know," Tate said. "I could tell." Another silence. "How is she?" Simone asked. "She's fine," he said. "She's mostly thinking about deep-sea creatures." He paused. "She asked me why I didn't get upset." Simone's voice was quieter. "What did you tell her?" Tate leaned back against the tailgate. The October sky over Renfrew was the color of old pewter, flat and still. "I told her I could be angry, or I could show her what to do with it." Simone didn't say anything for a few seconds. "She's going to remember that answer," she said. "I know," Tate said. "I'm counting on it." Priya called on Monday with something that changed the shape of everything slightly. The email Simone had received, the one warning her about a supposed disruption at the Gala, had been traced, not to a general hotel communications channel, to a specific external sender, a PR account registered to a consulting firm called Bain Strategy Group, whose primary client was an engineering holdings company called Harwick Industrial, run by a man named Stuart Bain. Stuart Bain had submitted a formal bid to acquire 2 of Tate's remaining patents 18 months ago. Morley Precision had declined. He'd submitted a second offer 4 months later, declined again. The scholarship program's growing visibility had made the patents worth more by association, and Bain had apparently decided that a publicly embarrassing incident at the Gala, footage of the founding donor behaving badly, was worth engineering. He had needed someone inside the hotel to react predictably when handed just enough information and just enough uncertainty. He had calculated correctly about Simone. He had calculated incorrectly about Tate. He built the whole thing, Priya said, on the assumption that you'd lose your temper. Tate was quiet. The footage was supposed to show you at your worst, she said. Instead, it showed you standing in the lobby with Maeve reading a book about fish. Deep-sea creatures, Tate said. Right. A pause. He bet against your character, and the thing he set up became evidence of the exact opposite of what he intended. Tate looked out the shop window at the ordinary Thursday afternoon. Document everything before we do anything with it, he said. And Priya, tell Simone Farrow what you found. She was used. She should know the full picture. He called Simone again that evening and told her everything. 8 minutes, no interruptions. When he finished, the line was silent for a long moment. I was set up, she said finally, not as an excuse, as a fact she was arriving at slowly. Partly, Tate said. Someone handed you a match, but you're the one who struck it. I know. She paused. I've been thinking about that. Before the email, before any of this, I'd already started to decide the moment I saw you. The email just gave me cover for something I'd already chosen. Tate said nothing. I don't think I'm a bad person, she said, but I was a careless one. And those are different things, aren't they? Yes, Tate said, they are. Stuart Bain's scheme did not produce the outcome he'd built it to produce. The engineering press ran a detailed account in November. Bain's lawyers issued a denial that was not widely accepted. The scholarship's annual donation total in the following cycle increased by 40%. 3 new corporate partners came forward. Ren, the Dalhousie recipient, who had befriended Maeve over a turtle backpack and 2 bread rolls, emailed Tate in January to say she'd accepted a co-op placement at a clean energy firm. He wrote back the same day. He said he'd read her thesis proposal properly, not as a formality. Simone Farrow left the Pemberton Grand in December. She sent Tate a short message. I'm not sure yet what comes next, but I'm asking better questions before I make decisions. That feels like the right direction. Thank you for calling, both times. He wrote back, good luck. Ask the questions out loud when you can. They're easier to examine that way. Maeve asked her question on the drive home from Toronto, somewhere near Carleton Place, looking up from the deep-sea book in the back seat. Dad, in the hotel, why didn't you get upset? Tate drove for a moment before answering. The highway was quiet in the dark, fields on both sides. I was upset, he said. You didn't act like it. No. She looked at him. So how come? He thought about how to say it in a way that was true and also something she could carry with her. I was thinking about you, he said. About what you'd remember. Not just that day, later. I wanted you to see that when someone treats you like you don't belong somewhere, you don't have to perform for them. You don't have to get loud. You can just stay where you are and be right. Maeve turned this over. Outside, the trees along the highway were black outlines against a dark blue sky. Is that dignity? She said. Tate glanced at her. Did you hear that word recently? Conrad said it. When we were waiting for the elevator. He said you had a lot of it. Tate didn't say anything for a moment. Is that what it means? Maeve asked. Just staying where you are and being right? Mostly, Tate said. Yeah. She seemed to find this acceptable. She went back to her book. They drove the last hour in the comfortable silence of 2 people who have been in a car together, long enough that silence has stopped needing to be filled. When they pulled into the driveway in Renfrew, Maeve got out, grabbed her turtle backpack, and stood for a moment looking at the dark garage with its plain black sign. Then she looked at her father. The scholarship girls, she said. The ones in the front row. She paused, working something out. Mom would have liked them. Tate stood in the driveway with his keys in his hand and the October night cold and still around them. Yeah, he said. She would have. Maeve nodded, satisfied, and went inside. He stood there a little longer, looking at the garage, the sign, the one light he always left on. Then he went in, made dinner, helped Maeve with a worksheet about water cycles, and, when she was asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with the legal pad he'd brought back from Toronto and read through what he'd written. He added 3 lines at the bottom. Then he closed the pad and went to bed. For the first time in 3 weeks, he slept the whole night through.